Violet Harper's hands shook as she held the crumpled letter, her father's desperate voice cutting through the Idaho wind. "You'll go to the Landry Ranch tomorrow. Xavier Landry will pay our debts if you marry him." The words landed like stones in her chest. She looked at her father's hollow eyes, at the eviction notice nailed to their cabin door, at the life they'd lost. "He's rejected every woman his sisters sent him. Wealthy, educated, beautiful women. They're sending you because they think he'll refuse. They want him to fail." Violet's throat tightened. They were using her poverty as a weapon, counting on her inadequacy to prove a point. But she had no choice. Please subscribe to our channel and stay with this story until the very end. Comment what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled. Violet stood in the kitchen before dawn, her mother's old dress hanging loose on her frame. She'd lost weight over the past year. They all had. Her father sat at the rough-hewn table, not meeting her eyes. "Samuel Harper, look at your daughter." Her grandmother's voice cracked from the corner. "Look at what you're doing." "Mother, please." "Don't mother please me." The old woman's cane struck the floor. "You're sending her like livestock to market. I'm saving this family." Samuel's fist hit the table. "Xavier Landry holds every debt we owe. Every single one. The store, the land, the equipment. He bought it all from the bank. If Violet doesn't go, we lose everything." Violet's voice came out steadier than she felt. "I'll go." Her grandmother turned away. "Your mother would weep." "Mama's gone." Violet touched the worn fabric at her shoulder. "And I'm still here. If this is what keeps us from starving, then I'll do it." Samuel finally looked up. His sisters arranged it, Catherine and Margaret Landry. They've been sending him women for 2 years. Daughters of senators, mining magnates, railroad tycoons. He's turned them all away. They think if they send someone like you, someone poor enough to be insulting, Violet finished the thought. Someone he'll reject immediately, and then they can say they tried. Violet. It's true, isn't it? She moved to the window. Outside, their once thriving garden was mostly weeds now. They want him to refuse me. They want to prove he's being unreasonable. Her father's silence was answer enough. "What does he get out of this arrangement?" Violet asked. "Why would Xavier Landry agree to marry anyone?" "His father's will." Samuel pulled out another letter, this one sealed with wax. "Xavier inherited the ranch 5 years ago, but there's a condition. He must marry before his 35th birthday, or the entire estate passes to his sister's husbands. He turns 35 in 4 months." Violet absorbed this. So he's desperate too. Catherine and Margaret think they're being clever. They believe he'll reject you, run out of time, and they'll take control of the ranch. Samuel's voice dropped. "But if he accepts you, if you actually marry him, your debts are cleared immediately. It's in writing." The weight of it settled over her. "And if he rejects me?" "We have nothing either way." Her father stood, suddenly looking ancient. "But at least this way, there's a chance." The wagon ride to the Landry Ranch took 4 hours. Violet sat beside the driver, a weathered man named Thomas, who seemed uncomfortable with the whole situation. "Miss Harper, I want you to know something." Thomas kept his eyes on the road. "I've worked for the Landry family for 15 years. Xavier isn't like his sisters." "What do you mean?" "Catherine and Margaret, they care about appearance, about status. They want the ranch for what it represents: power, position, wealth. But Xavier," Thomas paused, "he cares about the land itself, the cattle, the horses, the people who work here. He's a good man." Violet studied the horizon. Good men don't usually need their sisters to arrange marriages. No, miss, but proud men sometimes refuse to participate in schemes. Thomas glanced at her. Every woman they sent, he rejected them fair. Told them straight that he wouldn't marry for show. His sisters got angry, started sending more and more elaborate prospects. Last month, they brought a woman from San Francisco who arrived with 4 trunks and a lady's maid. What happened? Xavier asked her what she knew about cattle. She laughed, thought he was joking. He wasn't. He sent her back on the evening train. Thomas's voice held something like approval. His sisters were furious, so they changed tactics. They decided to send someone he couldn't possibly accept. Violet understood now. Someone so far beneath their standards that he'd have to refuse. That's what they think, miss. But I've watched Xavier turn away governors' daughters and banking heiresses. You want my opinion? He wasn't rejecting them because they weren't good enough. He was rejecting them because they weren't real. The words lodged in Violet's chest. She didn't know what to do with them. The Landry Ranch appeared like something from a dream, sprawling, prosperous, impossibly large. The main house stood 3 stories tall, painted white with dark green shutters. Barns stretched in multiple directions. Cattle grazed across hills that seemed endless. Violet's stomach tightened. She didn't belong here. Everyone would know it the moment she stepped out of the wagon. Catherine Landry met them at the front entrance, her silk dress impeccable, her smile sharp. "You must be Violet Harper." "Yes, ma'am." "How rustic." Catherine's eyes traveled over Violet's worn dress, her scuffed boots, her calloused hands. "Well, come inside. We shouldn't keep you waiting." The interior of the house was even more intimidating. Polished wood floors, oil paintings, furniture that probably cost more than Violet's entire cabin. Catherine led her through rooms that seemed designed to make visitors feel small. "Xavier is out with the cattle. He should return by evening." Catherine settled into a velvet chair. "In the meantime, perhaps you'd like to freshen up. Rosa can show you to the kitchen." The dismissal was clear. Violet wasn't guest enough for the sitting room. Rosa turned out to be a woman in her 50s, with kind eyes and quick hands. She brought Violet to a warm kitchen that smelled of bread and coffee. "Sit down, child. You look half-starved." Rosa placed food in front of her without waiting for an answer. "Don't mind Miss Catherine. She's got ideas about who's good enough for her brother, and she's wrong about every one of them." Violet managed a small smile. "She thinks I'm not good enough. She thinks nobody's good enough. That's her problem, not yours." Rosa poured coffee. "But Xavier, he's different. He sees what matters." "What does matter to him?" "Honesty, work, character." Rosa sat across from her. "Every woman his sisters brought here, they came with pretty words and practiced smiles. They wanted the ranch, the name, the money. Xavier could smell it on them like cheap perfume." "I'm here because my father owes him money." Violet forced herself to say it plainly. "That's not exactly honest courtship." "But you're not pretending otherwise, are you?" Rosa's gaze was steady. "That's more honesty than we've seen in 2 years." The afternoon stretched long. Catherine appeared twice, each time looking Violet over with barely concealed disdain. Margaret, the younger sister, arrived around 3 o'clock and made no effort to hide her contempt. "This is Father's legacy," Margaret spoke to Catherine as if Violet weren't there. "A girl in a dress that's been mended 6 times? It's what Xavier deserves for being so stubborn." Catherine's voice carried satisfaction. "He'll refuse her tonight, and we can finally move forward with transferring the ranch to proper hands." Violet sat in the kitchen, their words floating through the doorway. Rosa touched her shoulder gently. Don't listen to them. They're right, though. I don't belong here. Belonging isn't about silk dresses and fancy manners. Rosa's voice was firm. Xavier knows that. You'll see. When the sun started dipping toward the horizon, Rosa led Violet to a small parlor off the main hall. Wait here. He'll come to you. Violet stood by the window, watching riders approach the house. She could pick out Xavier immediately. He rode at the front, his posture confident, but not arrogant. When he dismounted, she saw he was tall, broad-shouldered, his face weathered by sun and wind. He moved like a man comfortable in his own skin. Her heart hammered against her ribs. The door opened. Xavier Landry stepped inside, still wearing his work clothes, dust on his boots. His eyes were blue-gray, direct and assessing. Violet Harper. Yes, sir. You can call me Xavier. He moved closer, studying her face. My sisters tell me you're here under duress. Violet's breath caught. I'm here because my father owes you money he can't repay. If marrying you clears that debt, then I'll do it. That's honest. Something shifted in his expression. Most women who've come here spent the first hour telling me how much they admired the ranch, how they'd always dreamed of ranch life, how fate brought us together. You're not going to do that? No, sir, Xavier. I won't lie to you. Good. He pulled a chair closer and sat, gesturing for her to do the same. Tell me about your father's debt. He owned a mercantile in Snake River. 5 years ago, he extended credit to families hit by drought. When they couldn't pay, he couldn't pay his suppliers. The bank foreclosed. He borrowed from private lenders to try to save it, but it was too late. The debt kept growing. Violet's hands twisted in her lap. Your name came up 6 months ago. Someone told my father you'd purchased his notes from various creditors. I did. Why? Xavier's eyebrow raised slightly. Most people don't ask why someone would buy debt. Most people aren't sitting in that someone's parlor discussing marriage. Violet met his gaze. If I'm going to marry you, I want to understand what kind of man you are. Fair enough. Xavier leaned back. I buy debt from predatory lenders, men who charge rates that ensure families never escape. I buy the debt, reduce the interest to something reasonable, and give people time to recover. Some pay me back eventually. Some don't. Either way, I'm not interested in crushing families. Violet absorbed this. That's not what your sisters would do. No, it's not. Xavier's voice hardened slightly. Catherine and Margaret believe in leverage. They think power comes from control. I disagree. But you're using my father's debt to arrange this marriage. I'm not. My sisters are. Xavier stood, moved to the window. They found your father's name on my books. They sent him the letter without my knowledge. I didn't know you existed until this morning, when Catherine informed me you'd be arriving. Violet's world tilted. You didn't ask for me? No. He turned back to her. But now that you're here, I have a question. Do you want to marry me? The bluntness of it stole her breath. I don't know you. That's not what I asked. Xavier's eyes held hers. Do you want to marry me? Not for your father's debt. Not because you have no other options. Do you want this? Violet's throat tightened. What I want doesn't matter. If I refuse, my family loses everything. That's not an answer. That's the only answer I have. Her voice rose despite herself. You're asking me to separate what I want from what I need, but I can't. They're tangled together. If I had money, if my father had never fallen into debt, would I choose to marry a stranger? No. But that's not my reality. My reality is that this marriage saves my family, and refusing means watching my father lose everything he's worked for. So what I want is irrelevant. Silence filled the room. Xavier studied her for a long moment. "All right, here's what I'll offer you." He moved closer again. "I'll clear your father's debt, regardless of whether you marry me. He owes roughly $4,000. I'll forgive the entire amount."
Violet's heart stopped. Why would you do that? Because using debt as leverage for marriage is something Catherine would do, and I won't be like my sisters.
Xavier's voice was steady. "Your father's debt is cleared. You're free to walk out that door right now, get in the wagon, and go home. No consequences, no conditions."
I don't understand.
"I'm giving you a choice." Xavier's hands were steady at his sides. "A real choice, not one forced by desperation. If you want to leave, leave. If you want to stay and consider this arrangement, stay. But it's your decision." Violet's mind raced. This wasn't how this was supposed to go. Catherine and Margaret expected Xavier to reject her. Her father expected her to be rejected. She'd expected to be rejected. But Xavier was offering her freedom, offering to help her family without demanding anything in return. "Why?" The word came out broken. "Why would you help me?" "Because I can." Xavier's voice softened slightly. "And because you're the first woman who's walked through that door and told me the truth." Tears burned behind Violet's eyes. She blinked them back hard. "What about your inheritance? Your father's will says you have to marry before your birthday. If I leave, you'll lose the ranch." "That's my problem, not yours." "But your sisters, they'll take everything." "Let them try." Xavier's jaw set. "I'd rather lose the ranch than force someone into marriage against their will." Violet stood, her legs shaky. She moved to the window, looking out at the vast land, the cattle grazing, the mountains in the distance. Behind her, Xavier waited silently. "I need to ask you something." She didn't turn around. "If I choose to stay, if I choose to marry you, not because of debt, but because I want to, what kind of marriage would it be?" "What do you mean?" "Would it be a partnership? Or would I be decorative?" Violet's hands gripped the windowsill. "Your sisters think I'm worthless. They sent me here as an insult. If I marry you, will you see me the way they do? Or will you see me as someone who can contribute?" "Turn around." She did. Xavier's expression was intense. "I don't want a decorative wife. I don't want someone who sits in the parlor doing needlework while the ranch runs itself. I want a partner, someone who'll work alongside me, who'll share the decisions, who'll help build something real." His voice dropped. "Every woman my sisters sent, they wanted to be Mrs. Xavier Landry. They wanted the title, the status, the money. None of them wanted the work. None of them cared about the cattle or the land or the people who depend on this place. You want to know what I saw when you walked in? I saw calloused hands. I saw a woman who knows what work means." "I was raised in a mercantile. I don't know anything about ranching." "You can learn, if you want to." Violet's heart pounded. What if I'm not good enough? What if Catherine and Margaret are right, and I'm too poor, too uneducated, too— "Stop," Xavier crossed the space between them. "I don't care what my sisters think. They've been trying to run my life for 5 years, and I'm done letting them. If you marry me, it's because you and I decide we want this. Nobody else gets a vote." "I'm scared," the admission slipped out. "Of what?" "Of failing. Of not being enough. Of—" Violet's voice cracked. "Of everything." Xavier's hand moved, hesitated, then gently touched her shoulder. "I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm asking you to be honest. That's all." "I can do that." "Then that's enough." Catherine's voice rang through the house an hour later.
Xavier! Xavier, where are you? They were still in the parlor. Violet had been asking questions about the ranch. How many head of cattle? How the operation ran? What the challenges were? Xavier had been answering, his respect for her clearly growing with each question. Catherine burst through the door. Well, have you sent her away yet? No, Xavier didn't stand. I'm considering the arrangement. Catherine's face went white, then red. You can't be serious. Look at her. I am looking at her. Xavier, she's nobody. The daughter of a failed merchant. She has nothing to offer. She has everything I need. Xavier's voice went cold. And you're dismissed, Catherine. I will not be. You will. Xavier stood now, and his presence filled the room. You sent Violet here thinking I'd humiliate her. You wanted to use her poverty as a weapon against me. But you miscalculated. Get out. Catherine's mouth opened and closed. Then she turned and stalked from the room. Violet's hands trembled. She's going to hate me. She already hates me for not doing what she wants. You'll survive her hatred the same way I have, by not caring about it. Xavier sat back down. Now, where were we? You were asking about the water rights issue with the Henderson property. Violet almost laughed. The absurdity of it, discussing water rights after the confrontation, struck her as either insane or perfectly rational. She chose to believe it was rational. Yes, you said there's a dispute about creek access? Xavier grinned. You're going to fit in here just fine. They talked until Rosa knocked gently and announced dinner. Catherine and Margaret were notably absent from the meal. Xavier explained that they'd taken their dinner in their rooms, which suited him perfectly. They'll leave tomorrow. Xavier passed Violet the bread. They maintain a residence in Denver. They only come here when they think they can control me. Won't they try to fight this? The marriage? Probably, but my father's will is clear. I have to marry before my birthday. It doesn't specify who. Catherine and Margaret can disapprove all they want, but they can't prevent it. How much time do we have? 3 months and 22 days. Violet did the calculation. That's not much time to plan a wedding. We don't need much time. Justice of the peace can do it in an afternoon. Xavier paused. Unless you want something different? A church ceremony? A celebration? No. Violet surprised herself with the certainty. I don't want spectacle. I want it to be real. It will be. Xavier's eyes held hers. Violet, I need to know. Are you staying because you want to, or because you think you have no choice? She thought about the offer he'd made earlier. Clear her father's debt regardless. Let her walk away free. She thought about her fear, her uncertainty, the overwhelming strangeness of this entire day. And she thought about the way Xavier had looked at her. Not with pity, not with condescension, but with respect. I'm staying because I want to. The words felt terrifying and right. I don't know if this will work. I don't know if I can be what you need, but I want to try. Then we'll try together. Later, Rosa showed Violet to a guest room. It was simple but clean, nothing like the elaborate suites Catherine and Margaret occupied. Xavier asked me to put you here. Rosa smoothed the quilt on the bed. Said you'd prefer practical over fancy. He's right. Rosa smiled. He usually is. He's a good judge of people. She moved toward the door, then paused. Miss Violet? This ranch has needed someone like you for a long time. Someone real. Don't let those sisters make you doubt yourself. After Rosa left, Violet stood at the window again, looking out at the moonlit land. Somewhere out there, Xavier was checking the barns, walking the property,
doing the work that never really ended on a ranch. She thought about her father, receiving word that his debt was cleared. She thought about her grandmother's relief. She thought about the life she might build here, not as decoration, not as obligation, but as partnership. The fear didn't disappear, but underneath it, something else grew. Something that felt dangerously close to hope. Tomorrow, she'd start learning. She'd ask Xavier to teach her about the cattle, the horses, the land. She'd prove that his choice, their choice, was the right one. And she'd show Catherine and Margaret that poverty didn't equal worthlessness, that strength came in forms they'd never recognized. Violet touched the window glass, her reflection staring back at her. She barely recognized herself. The desperate girl who'd climbed into the wagon this morning was already changing. "All right," she whispered to her reflection. "Let's see what you're made of." Morning came with a knock on the door at 4:30. Violet jerked awake, disoriented, her heart pounding before she remembered where she was. "Miss Violet?" Rose's voice came through the wood. "Xavier's waiting in the kitchen." Violet dressed quickly in the same worn clothes from yesterday. When she reached the kitchen, Xavier was already there, coffee in hand, looking like he'd been up for hours. "You sleep all right?" "Yes. What time did you get up?" 3. Calving season doesn't wait for comfortable schedules. He handed her a cup of coffee. "You said you wanted to learn. We start now." "Now?" Violet glanced at the window. It was still dark outside. "Ranch work doesn't happen in daylight hours only. You coming or not?" She grabbed the coffee and followed him out into the cold pre-dawn air. The world smelled of hay and animals and something wild she couldn't name. Xavier moved with purpose toward the nearest barn, and Violet had to hurry to keep up. "First rule: animals don't care about your convenience. They eat when they're hungry, they get sick when they get sick, and they give birth when they're ready. You work around their schedule, not yours." Inside the barn, Xavier showed her how to check the pregnant cows, how to spot signs of distress, how to feel for the calf's position. His hands were patient, his explanations clear. When Violet hesitated to touch the cow's swollen belly, he didn't mock her. "She won't hurt you. Go ahead." Violet pressed her palm against the warm hide and felt movement beneath, strong, insistent, alive. Something shifted in her chest. "There's a calf in there." "Due any day now." Xavier moved to the next stall. "This one's further along. Might go tonight." They worked through the morning, feeding, checking water troughs, examining each animal. Violet's hands grew numb with cold. Her shoulders ached, and she loved every minute of it. This was real. This was work that mattered. When they finally returned to the house for breakfast, Catherine was waiting in the dining room, her expression icy. "Xavier, we need to discuss this situation." "No, we don't." Xavier didn't slow down. "Violet and I are getting married. That's the end of the discussion." "You can't possibly." "I can. And I am. You and Margaret can either accept it or leave. Your choice." Catherine's teacup rattled against the saucer. "Father would be ashamed." Xavier stopped then, turned slowly. "Father put that condition in his will because he was dying and afraid I'd end up alone. He wanted me to have a partner, someone to build a life with. You think he'd rather I married one of those women you paraded through here? Women who looked at this ranch like it was a trophy?" His voice dropped dangerously low. "Or do you think he'd respect someone willing to wake up before dawn and learn how to care for the land he loved?" "She's a merchant's daughter. She knows nothing about—" "She knows more after one morning than half the society women you brought here would learn in a lifetime." Xavier pulled out a chair for Violet. "Sit. Eat. You've earned it." Violet sat, her legs shaking slightly from exertion and adrenaline. Catherine stared at her with such pure hatred that Violet had to look away. "This isn't over." Catherine stood abruptly. Margaret and I will not stand by while you make a mockery of this family's name. Then don't stand by. Go back to Denver. Nobody's keeping you here. After Catherine swept out, Violet pushed her plate away, her appetite gone. She's going to make trouble. Let her try. Xavier ate calmly. She doesn't have any power here. The ranch is mine until I either marry or turn 35. Once we're married, it's ours. She can't touch it. What if she tries to prove I'm unsuitable somehow? What if she finds a way to contest the marriage? On what grounds? My father's will doesn't specify breeding or bank accounts. It just says I have to marry. Xavier's eyes met hers. Stop worrying about Catherine. Worry about whether you can handle the work. That's what matters. Violet straightened her spine. I can handle it. Good, because this afternoon, you're learning to ride. The horse was enormous. Violet stood beside it, trying not to show her terror. This is Copper. Xavier stroked the mare's neck. She's gentle, patient, and she won't tolerate nonsense. Perfect for beginners. I've never been on a horse. I know. That's why we're starting now. Xavier showed her how to approach, how to let the horse smell her, how to read the animal's body language. Then he cupped his hands for her foot. Up you go. Violet grabbed the saddle and hauled herself up, ungraceful and awkward. The ground seemed very far away. Don't tense up. She can feel your fear. Xavier's hand steadied her ankle. Breathe. Let your body move with hers. For the next hour, Xavier led Copper in slow circles around the corral, while Violet learned to sit, to balance, to trust. Her thighs burned, her back ached, but she refused to complain. You're doing well. Xavier's voice held approval. Most people panic the first time. You're keeping your head. I'm terrified. I know, but you're not letting it stop you. That's the difference. They were still in the corral when a rider approached. A man in his 50s, well-dressed, his horse expensive. Xavier's expression shifted into something guarded. Thomas, help Miss Violet down. The driver from yesterday appeared and offered his hand. Violet dismounted gratefully, her legs wobbling. Marcus. Xavier's greeting was cool. Didn't expect you. Heard interesting news in town. Thought I'd come see for myself. Marcus's eyes swept over Violet dismissively. This is your solution to the will problem? Catherine's going to have a fit. Catherine's already had several fits. What do you want, Marcus? Just checking on my investment. Marcus dismounted, moved closer. You remember our agreement. When you lose the ranch, I get first option to buy the water rights. Violet's stomach dropped. What agreement? Marcus and I made a deal 2 years ago. Xavier's jaw was tight. If I failed to marry and lost the ranch, he'd have first option on the creek access. It was stupid, and I regret it. But now you're marrying. Marcus looked at Violet again, his smile cruel. This one. How convenient. Convenient or not, the agreement is void once I'm married. If you're married. Marcus's emphasis on the if was deliberate. Marriage has to be legitimate. If it's a sham arrangement, the will's conditions aren't met. Catherine's been telling some very interesting stories about how this girl's father owed you money. Xavier went very still. Get off my property. Just stating facts. If this is a marriage of convenience, a transaction to satisfy the will's technicality, well, that might not hold up in court. Marcus swung back onto his horse. See you at the wedding, if there is one. After he rode away, Violet turned to Xavier. Can he do that? Challenge the marriage as illegitimate? He can try, but he'd have to prove it's not a real marriage. Xavier's voice was grim. Which means we need to make sure there's no question about our intentions. How do we do that? We get married sooner rather than later, And we make it very clear to everyone that this is genuine." Xavier met her eyes. "Are you ready for that? For people to scrutinize everything we do, looking for cracks?" Violet thought about Marcus's contemptuous look, about Catherine's hatred, about the fact that everyone would assume she was a gold digger marrying for money. Then she thought about the way Xavier had patiently taught her about the cows, about the feel of the calf moving beneath her hand, about the possibility of building something real. "I'm ready." That evening, Xavier called a meeting of the ranch hands. 23 men gathered in the main barn, their expressions curious and wary. Violet stood beside Xavier, acutely aware of their scrutiny. "Most of you have heard rumors by now." Xavier's voice carried authority. "So I'm setting the record straight. This is Violet Harper. We're getting married in 2 weeks. She'll be working alongside me, learning the operation, and I expect everyone to treat her with the same respect you'd show me." A murmur ran through the group. One man, tall, scarred, with eyes that had seen too much, stepped forward. "Boss, no disrespect, but most of us have been working this ranch for years. You're asking us to take orders from someone who doesn't know a heifer from a bull? I'm asking you to teach her the difference, Cole." Xavier's tone didn't rise, but something in it made the man step back. "Just like you taught every other hand when they first started here, or have you forgotten what it's like to learn?" Cole's jaw worked. "That's different." "How?" She's not one of us." "She is now." Xavier's hand moved to Violet's shoulder, solid and sure. "Anyone who has a problem with that can collect their pay and leave. I won't keep men who can't follow orders." Silence. Then, slowly, the men began to nod. Not enthusiastically, but with acceptance. All except Cole, whose expression remained hostile. "I'll give her 2 weeks. If she can't pull her weight by then, I'm speaking up again." "Fair enough." Xavier met his gaze evenly. 2 weeks. After the men dispersed, Violet let out a breath she didn't know she'd been holding. "Cole hates me." "Cole hates change. He'll come around, or he won't. Either way, you don't need his approval." Xavier turned to her. "But he's right about one thing. You've got 2 weeks to prove yourself. Not to him, to yourself. Can you do it?" "I don't know." "Wrong answer." Violet straightened. "Yes, I can do it." "Better." Xavier started toward the house. "We start at 4 tomorrow. Wear something you don't mind ruining. You're going to get dirty." The next 2 weeks blurred together in a haze of exhaustion and determination. Violet woke before dawn, worked until dark, and fell into bed with muscles screaming. Xavier taught her everything: how to mend fence, how to recognize illness in the cattle, how to read the weather, how to handle difficult animals. Rosa taught her about managing supplies, about feeding the hands, about the endless logistics of keeping a ranch running. And slowly, grudgingly, the men began to accept her. Not because she was perfect, she made mistakes constantly, but because she didn't quit. When she fell off copper the 3rd time, she climbed back on. When a steer kicked her, bruising her ribs, she finished the job before going to Rosa for bandages. When Cole deliberately gave her the hardest, dirtiest tasks, she completed them without complaining. On the 10th day, something shifted. Violet was in the barn, struggling to move a heavy saddle, when Cole appeared beside her. "You're doing it wrong. Here." He showed her the proper way to lift, to balance the weight. "Boss said you're learning to ride. This saddle's too big for you. Use the one on the 3rd rack." It was the first civil word he'd spoken to her. Violet nodded, not trusting herself to speak. That night at dinner, Xavier smiled at her across the table. "Cole spoke to me today. Said you might actually make a decent ranch hand if you survive the first year. That's high praise from him, isn't it? The highest. Xavier's expression softened. You're doing well, Violet. Better than I expected. Better than you expected? She raised an eyebrow. Should I be insulted? No, I expected you to be good. You're exceptional. The words hit her harder than they should have. Violet looked down at her plate, blinking against sudden emotion. I'm just trying not to embarrass you. You couldn't. Not with the effort you're putting in. Xavier reached across the table, his hand covering hers briefly. I'm proud of what you're accomplishing. Before Violet could respond, Rosa burst into the dining room, her face pale. Xavier, there's trouble. Catherine's in town with a lawyer. Someone just rode in to warn us. Xavier stood immediately. What kind of trouble? She's filing a formal complaint with the county. Claims the marriage is fraudulent, that you're coercing Violet to satisfy the will's requirements. She's demanding a hearing. Violet's blood went cold. Can she do that? She can try. Xavier's expression hardened. Get my coat. We're going to town. Now? It's almost dark. Now. Xavier looked at Violet. You coming? She stood, her decision instant. Yes. The ride to town took an hour. By the time they arrived, the county clerk's office was closed, but lights still burned in the building. Xavier tied the horses and strode toward the door, Violet half running to keep pace. Inside, Catherine sat with a sharp-eyed man in an expensive suit. The lawyer, clearly. The county clerk, a nervous-looking man named Patterson, stood behind his desk, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. Xavier. Catherine's smile was poisonous. How nice of you to join us. What are you doing? Protecting Father's legacy, Catherine gestured to the lawyer. Mr. Whitmore has been reviewing the will's language. The requirement is that you marry, a legitimate marriage, entered into freely by both parties, not a financial transaction disguised as matrimony. My marriage to Violet is legitimate. Is it? Whitmore opened a folder. We have evidence that Miss Harper's father owed you substantial debts, that those debts were forgiven contingent on her agreement to marry you. That constitutes coercion, which invalidates the marriage for purposes of the will. That's a lie. Violet's voice came out stronger than she felt. Xavier offered to forgive my father's debt whether I married him or not. Do you have that in writing? Whitmore's smile was sharp. Violet's heart sank. No, but... Then it's your word against the documented facts. Facts that show a clear financial transaction. Whitmore turned to Patterson. We're requesting a formal hearing to determine the legitimacy of this marriage before it takes place. If the court finds it's a sham arrangement, the marriage won't satisfy the will's requirements, and control of the ranch will pass to Mrs. Catherine Ashford and Mrs. Margaret Brennan upon Xavier's 35th birthday. You can't do this. Xavier's voice was deadly quiet. You're trying to steal my ranch. We're protecting it from your poor judgment. Catherine stood. You've always been stubborn, Xavier, but this is beyond reckless. Marrying a nobody, a girl from a failed merchant family, someone with nothing to offer but desperation. Enough. Xavier moved forward, and Whitmore actually stepped back. You want a hearing? Fine. We'll have a hearing. And when it's done, when everyone sees that Violet and I are entering this marriage freely and legitimately, you'll have lost your last chance to control my life. We'll see. Catherine gathered her things. The hearing is scheduled for next week. I suggest you find yourself a lawyer, Xavier. You're going to need one. After they left, Patterson looked at Xavier apologetically. I'm sorry. She had all the paperwork in order. I had to accept the complaint. I know. It's not your fault. Xavier turned to Violet. We need to get ahead of this. Fast. Outside, Violet stopped him before he could mount his horse.
Xavier, maybe she's right. Maybe this is too complicated. If the court rules against us, you lose everything anyway. But if we ended this now, you'd have time to find someone else. Someone without all this baggage.
Stop. Xavier's hands gripped her shoulders.
You think I'd give up because my sisters are throwing a tantrum? You think I'd let them win after everything they've done?
But I'm the problem. If it weren't for my father's debt,
Your father's debt is irrelevant. I cleared it because I wanted to, not as payment for marriage. And I'm marrying you because I choose to, not because I have to.
Xavier's eyes burned into hers. You've worked harder in 2 weeks than most people work in a year. You've earned the respect of men who don't respect easily. You've shown more courage and determination than anyone I've ever met. You think I'm going to let Catherine's schemes take that away from us?
Us?
Violet's voice broke on the word. Yes, us. This isn't just about the ranch anymore, Violet. This is about you and me building something together. Xavier's voice softened. I won't force you to stay. If you want to leave, I'll understand. But don't leave because you think you're protecting me. I don't need protection. I need a partner.
And that's what you've become.
Violet's throat tightened. 2 weeks ago, she'd been a desperate girl with no options. Now she stood in the street of a town she barely knew, with a man who saw her as more than her circumstances. And she realized she didn't want to leave. She wanted to fight. What do we do? Xavier's smile was fierce. We get married, tomorrow, before the hearing. Once we're legally married, it's much harder for them to claim it's fraudulent.
Tomorrow?
Violet's heart hammered.
But the hearing's next week. We have time to prepare.
No, we don't wait. We don't give Catherine any more time to scheme. Xavier mounted his horse, then offered his hand to Violet. We ride to the next county tonight. Find a justice of the peace. Get married before dawn. By the time Catherine realizes what we've done, it'll be too late. Violet stared at his outstretched hand.
This was insane. Reckless. Exactly the kind of impulsive decision that could ruin everything.
She took his hand and swung up behind him.
Let's go get married.
They rode through the night, the cold wind biting at Violet's face, Xavier's back solid against her chest. The stars wheeled overhead, indifferent to their desperate gamble. Somewhere behind them, Catherine was probably celebrating her clever legal maneuver. Somewhere ahead, a justice of the peace was sleeping, unaware that he was about to perform a marriage that would determine the fate of the largest ranch in 3 counties. Violet tightened her arms around Xavier's waist and held on as they rode toward dawn, toward marriage, toward a future she could barely imagine, but suddenly, fiercely wanted. They reached the town of Millbrook just as the eastern sky began to pale. Violet's entire body ached from the ride, her fingers numb where they gripped Xavier's coat. He pulled up in front of a modest house with a sign reading, Justice Harwell, Legal Services. Stay here. Xavier dismounted, strode to the door, and pounded hard enough to wake the dead. A window opened upstairs. An elderly man stuck his head out, his nightcap askew. What in blazes? Justice Harwell, I need you to perform a marriage. Now. It's 4 a.m. I know what time it is. I'll pay double your fee. Triple. Just get down here. Harwell squinted at Xavier, then at Violet, still on the horse. This some kind of emergency? Yes. The girl pregnant? No. Xavier's patience was clearly wearing thin. But we need to be married before sunrise. Can you do it or not? Something in Xavier's tone must have convinced him. Harwell disappeared from the window. 5 minutes later, he opened the door, fully dressed, but still grumbling. You're lucky my wife's a romantic. She says any couple desperate enough to wake us at dawn deserves help. He gestured them inside. Come on then, let's make this legal. The ceremony took less than 10 minutes. Harwell's wife served as witness, her eyes bright with curiosity. There were no flowers, no music, no guests. just Harwell reading from a worn book, while Violet and Xavier stood side by side in his cramped parlor. "Do you, Xavier James Landry, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." "Do you, Violet Ann Harper, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Violet's voice came out stronger than she felt. "I do." "Then, by the power vested in me by the territory of Idaho, I pronounce you husband and wife." Harwell closed the book. "You may kiss your bride, though I suspect you're in too much of a hurry for such niceties." Xavier turned to Violet, his expression unreadable. Then, gently, he cupped her face and kissed her. It was brief, almost chaste, but Violet felt it down to her bones. When he pulled away, his eyes held something fierce and protective. "You're mine now, and I'm yours. No one can change that." Harwell produced the marriage certificate with a flourish. "Sign here, both of you. Mrs. Harwell will witness." Violet's hand shook as she wrote her name. Her new name, Violet Landry. It looked foreign on the paper, like it belonged to someone else. "Keep this safe," Harwell handed the certificate to Xavier. "And good luck with whatever trouble you're running from." "We're running towards something, not from it." Xavier paid him generously. "Thank you for your help." Outside, the sun was cresting the horizon. Xavier helped Violet back onto the horse, and they turned toward home. Violet's exhaustion was bone deep, but adrenaline kept her alert. "What happens now?" she asked against Xavier's back. "Now we go home, get a few hours of sleep, and prepare for Catherine's reaction. She's going to be furious." "That's an understatement." Xavier's laugh was short and sharp. "She wanted to control when and how I married. We just took that power away from her. She'll fight back."
How?
"I don't know, but we'll handle it together." Together. The word settled in the Violet's chest like an anchor. They reached the ranch around noon. Thomas met them at the stables, his expression carefully neutral. "Miss Catherine's been looking for you, boss. She's in a state." "I bet she is." Xavier helped Violet down. "Where is she?" "Dining room. Mr. Whitmore's with her." Xavier's jaw tightened. "Of course he is. Thomas, spread the word to the hands. Violet and I were married this morning. Anyone who has a problem with it can speak to me directly." Thomas's eyes widened. Then he grinned. "Congratulations, Mrs. Landry. And boss, you might want to brace yourself. Miss Catherine threw a vase when she heard you'd left town." Inside, Catherine was pacing the dining room like a caged animal. Whitmore sat at the table, documents spread before him. They both looked up when Xavier and Violet entered. "Where have you been?" Catherine's voice was shrill. "You disappeared in the middle of the night." "Getting married." Xavier pulled the certificate from his coat and placed it on the table. "Violet and I were married at 4:30 this morning by Justice Harwell in Millbrook. It's legal, it's binding, and your hearing next week is now irrelevant." Catherine's face went white, then crimson. "You can't! You didn't!" "We did." Xavier's voice was steel. "The marriage is legitimate. The will's requirements are satisfied. The ranch stays mine. You lose." Whitmore picked up the certificate, examined it carefully. "This appears to be in order." "Of course it is." Xavier pulled out a chair for Violet. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my wife and I have had a long night. We're going to rest." "This isn't over!" Catherine's voice shook with rage. "You think a rushed ceremony changes anything? You married her to circumvent the will's intent." "I married her because I wanted to." Xavier's hand found Violet's shoulder. "The will required marriage. I'm married. Everything else is your problem, not mine." "Father wanted you to marry well, to strengthen the family's position."
Father wanted me to marry someone who'd love this ranch as much as I do. Someone who'd work for it, Fight for it. Build it into something lasting. Xavier's eyes never left Catherine's. I found that person. The fact that she doesn't meet your standards of well is irrelevant. Whitmore cleared his throat. Mr. Landry, while the marriage certificate is valid, Mrs. Ashford could still argue that the marriage was entered into under false pretenses. If she can prove coercion or fraud, she can't. Violet spoke up, her voice clear. Because there wasn't any. Xavier offered to clear my father's debt whether I married him or not. I chose to marry him. That's not coercion. That's free will. Do you have witnesses to this alleged offer? Rosa was present when we first discussed the arrangement. Violet met Whitmore's gaze steadily. So was Thomas. They'll testify if needed. Catherine's laugh was bitter. Here servants will say whatever you tell them to say.
My employees will tell the truth. Xavier's voice dropped dangerously. Unlike some people's lawyers, who seem perfectly comfortable twisting facts to fit a narrative. How dare you? No, how dare you? Xavier moved forward, and Catherine actually stepped back. You've spent 5 years trying to manipulate me into marrying someone you could control. Someone who'd side with you against me, who'd help you turn this ranch into the society showpiece you've always wanted. But that's not happening. Not now, not ever. Violet is my wife. Accept it or leave. Those are your only options. I'll contest this marriage in court. I'll prove it's a sham. Go ahead and try. Xavier's smile was cold. But understand this. Every day you spend fighting me is another day you're not welcome on this property. Choose your battles carefully, Catherine. The room crackled with tension. Finally, Whitmore gathered his papers. Mrs. Ashford, I think we should consult before proceeding further. Catherine's hands trembled as she straightened her dress. This isn't finished, Xavier. Not by a long shot. After they left, Violet sank into a chair, exhaustion crashing over her. Xavier poured her coffee, his movements automatic. That went better than expected. Better? Violet's laugh was shaky. She looked ready to murder us both. She looked defeated. There's a difference. Xavier sat across from her. The marriage certificate is legal. Her lawyer confirmed it. She can threaten all she wants, but unless she can prove actual fraud, she has no case. Can she prove fraud? Not if everyone tells the truth. Xavier's eyes were serious. Violet, I need to ask you something. When we're questioned, and we will be questioned, can you honestly say you married me of your own free will? Violet thought about the desperate girl who'd climbed into Thomas's wagon 2 weeks ago. She thought about learning to ride, to work cattle, to belong somewhere. She thought about Xavier's patient teaching, his respect, the way he'd looked at her during the ceremony. Yes, I can honestly say that. Even though your father owed me money? Xavier offered to clear the debt regardless. I married him because I wanted to, not because I had to. Violet's voice steadied. That's the truth. I'll say it under oath if necessary. Xavier reached across the table, took her hand. Thank you. For what? For choosing this. For choosing me. Before Violet could respond, Rosa burst into the room. Xavier, there's trouble at the south pasture. One of the hands just rode in. Says there's fence down and cattle getting loose. Xavier stood immediately. How many head? At least 30, maybe more. Get Cole and the others. We need to round them up before they scatter. Xavier looked at Violet. I have to go. This could take hours. I'm coming with you. Violet, you're exhausted. So are you. She stood, ignoring her protesting muscles. You said we're partners. Partners don't sit at home while the other one works. Something shifted in Xavier's expression. Pride, gratitude, something deeper. All right.
Let's go. The south pasture was chaos. Cattle milled everywhere, confused and agitated, pushing through gaps in the downed fence. Xavier started barking orders the moment they arrived, and the hands jumped into action. Violet, stay with Thomas. Help him funnel the stragglers back this direction. Don't try to chase them, just guide them toward the opening. For the next 4 hours, Violet worked harder than she'd ever worked in her life. Her body screamed for rest. Her hands were raw, her voice hoarse from shouting. But every time she thought about giving up, she saw Xavier in the thick of it, working alongside his men, treating her instructions to Thomas with the same weight as his own orders. Finally, as the sun began to set, the last steer was corralled and the fence temporarily patched. Xavier rode up beside her, his face streaked with dirt and sweat. "Good work." "I barely did anything." "You did exactly what I asked you to do. You didn't panic, you didn't quit, and you worked smart." Xavier dismounted, helped her down from Copper. "The men are talking. They're saying you're tougher than you look." "Is that good?" "That's the highest compliment you'll get from ranch hands." Xavier's smile was genuine. "Come on, let's get cleaned up before dinner." They were halfway back to the house when Cole rode up, his expression grim. "Boss, you need to see this." "What?" "The fence. It wasn't weather damage. Someone cut it." Xavier went very still. "You're sure?" "Positive. Clean cuts on the wire, all of the same height. This was deliberate." Violet's stomach dropped. "Catherine." "We don't know that." But Xavier's voice suggested he was thinking the same thing. "Could be rustlers, vandals, someone with a grudge, or your sister trying to cause problems." Cole looked at Violet, then back at Xavier. "Boss, if someone's sabotaging the ranch, we need to know. We need to be ready. Increase patrols, 2 men per shift, rotating every 4 hours. I want eyes on the entire perimeter." Xavier's jaw was set. "And Cole, keep this quiet for now. If someone's trying to stir up trouble, I don't want to give them the satisfaction of seeing us panic." After Cole rode off, Violet touched Xavier's arm. "This is because of me. Catherine's retaliating." "Stop." Xavier turned to face her. "Catherine's been trying to undermine me for years. This isn't about you. It's about her losing control. Don't take responsibility for her choices." "But if I hadn't come here..." "If you hadn't come here, I'd be fighting Catherine alone. Now I have someone standing beside me." Xavier's hands framed her face. "You're not the problem, Violet. You're the solution." The next morning brought worse news. Thomas found 3 more sections of fence damaged, and 2 calves were missing. Xavier called an emergency meeting of all the hands. "Someone's targeting this ranch. I don't know who or why, but it stops now. I want round-the-clock surveillance, armed patrols, and anyone who sees anything suspicious reports directly to me. No exceptions." "Boss," one of the younger hands, a boy named Peter, spoke up nervously. "There's talk in town. Miss Catherine's been telling people that you rushed into marriage, that Mrs. Landry isn't... that she's not fit to be here." Xavier's expression darkened. "What else is she saying?" "That the ranch is going to fail under your management, that you're making reckless decisions, that once the ranch falls apart, she and Mrs. Margaret will step in to save it." Peter shifted uncomfortably. "Some folks are listening." "Let them listen." Xavier's voice carried absolute certainty. "Words don't run a ranch, work does, and we're going to work harder than Catherine can scheme. Understood?" The men nodded, but Violet could see doubt in some of their faces. Catherine's campaign of whispers was working. That afternoon, Marcus appeared again, his timing suspiciously convenient. He found Xavier and Violet in the barn, checking the pregnant cows.
Heard you've been having some trouble. News travels fast. Xavier didn't look up from his examination. Fence cutting, missing cattle, that's serious business. Marcus leaned against the stall. Makes a man wonder if he's got enemies he doesn't know about. Or enemies he knows very well. Careful with accusations, Xavier. Wouldn't want to make more enemies. Marcus's smile was sharp. Speaking of which, I heard about your midnight marriage. Very romantic. Very sudden. What do you want, Marcus? Just being neighborly. Wanted to let you know that Catherine came to see me yesterday. Had an interesting proposition. Xavier straightened. What kind of proposition? She thinks your marriage might not survive the first year. Thinks Violet here might decide ranch life isn't for her after all. Marcus's eyes slid to Violet. If that happens, if the marriage dissolves before the year's out, the will's conditions aren't met. Ranch passes to Catherine and Margaret, and she's offering me a very generous deal on those water rights I wanted. Violet's blood ran cold. She's planning something. Smart girl. Marcus tipped his hat. Just thought you should know what you're up against. Catherine's playing a long game. She doesn't need to prove your marriage is fraudulent. She just needs it to fail. And she's very good at making things fail. After he left, Xavier slammed his fist against the stall door, making the cow inside jump. She's going to sabotage us, make life so difficult that you'll want to leave. I'm not leaving. You say that now, but if things get worse, if the fence cutting escalates, if the hands start quitting, if the whole operation starts falling apart, I'm not leaving. Violet grabbed his arm, forced him to look at her. Xavier, listen to me. I've spent my entire life watching my father lose everything because he gave up, because he let circumstances defeat him. I'm not making that mistake. Whatever Catherine throws at us, we handle it together. That's what marriage means, isn't it? Xavier pulled her close, his arms tight around her. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. Violet's voice was muffled against his chest. And I deserve you. We deserve this. Don't let Catherine take it away. The attacks escalated. Over the next week, they lost more fence, 6 more cattle went missing, and someone started a fire in the hay barn that would have destroyed everything if Thomas hadn't spotted it early. The hands were jumpy, exhausted from constant patrols. Violet worked alongside them, refusing to hide in the house while the ranch burned around her. On the 8th day, Cole found something. He rode up to where Xavier and Violet were repairing yet another section of fence, his expression thunderous. Boss, you need to see this. He handed Xavier a piece of torn fabric. Found it caught on the fence near the burn site. It's expensive material, not something a drifter or rustler would wear. Xavier examined it, his face hardening. This is from Catherine's coat. I'd recognize it anywhere. There's more. I found fresh horse tracks leading from the burn site back toward town. Small horse, light rider. Could be a woman. Or could be someone trying to frame Catherine. Xavier's voice was tight. We need proof, real proof, not just suspicions. Then we set a trap, Violet spoke up, the plan forming even as she said it. We let Catherine think she's winning. We spread word that I'm overwhelmed, that I'm considering leaving. We make her confident enough to make a mistake. Xavier shook his head immediately. No. If she thinks you're breaking, she'll push harder. You could get hurt. I'm already in danger. We all are. Violet's voice was steady. But if we can catch her in the act, actually sabotaging the ranch, we can stop this permanently. Not just the attacks, but her legal challenges too. Criminal activity voids her claim to the ranch completely. Cole grunted approval. The girl's got a point. If we catch Miss Catherine red-handed, it's over. It's too risky. Everything's risky. Violet met Xavier's eyes. But doing nothing while she destroys everything we're building? That's riskier. Let me do this. Let me help. Xavier was silent for a long moment. Then, reluctantly, he nodded. All right, but we do this carefully. No unnecessary risks. And if anything goes wrong, you run. Promise me. I promise. They spent the next 2 days setting the stage. Violet made sure to look exhausted, which wasn't difficult given her actual exhaustion. She let slip to Rosa, within hearing of one of the hands they suspected of reporting to Catherine, that she was reconsidering her decision. That ranch life was harder than she'd expected. That maybe Catherine was right about her not belonging. The whispers spread. Within 24 hours, Marcus appeared again, his smile knowing. Heard your wife's having second thoughts. Xavier played his part perfectly. Tight-lipped anger, refusal to discuss it, the appearance of a man whose marriage was crumbling. After Marcus left, surely running straight to Catherine with the news, they prepared the actual trap. She'll come tonight. Xavier checked his rifle for the 3rd time. She'll think we're distracted by our marital problems. She'll try something big, something designed to be the final straw that makes you leave. What do you think she'll target? The main barn. It's closest to the house, most visible. Burning it would be a statement. Xavier looked at Violet. You don't have to do this. I can handle it with the men. We're doing this together. Violet loaded her own rifle, the one Xavier had taught her to shoot 3 days ago. I'm not sitting inside while you risk yourself. They waited in the darkness, hidden in the shadows near the main barn. Cole and 3 other trusted hands were positioned around the perimeter. Hours crawled by. Violet's legs cramped. Her eyes burned from staring into the darkness. But she didn't move. Just before midnight, they heard it. The soft sound of hoofbeats, muffled by cloth wrapped around the horse's hooves. A figure approached the barn, moving with practiced stealth. In the moonlight, Violet could just make out expensive riding clothes, a woman's silhouette. Catherine. She was carrying something, a can of kerosene. As they watched, she began pouring it along the barn's base, her movements quick and efficient. This wasn't her first time. Xavier stood, his rifle raised. Catherine, stop! Catherine froze, then spun around. Even in the darkness, Violet could see her shock. Xavier, this isn't... Isn't what? Arson? Sabotage? Xavier's voice was cold. Cole, light the lamps. Suddenly the area was flooded with light. Catherine stood caught like a deer, the kerosene can still in her hand, the evidence damning. She dropped it immediately. You don't understand. I was trying to help. By burning my barn? Xavier moved closer. By cutting fences? By stealing cattle? By terrorizing my ranch for 2 weeks? You've lost your mind. Marrying that girl, letting her poison your judgment. The only poison here is you. Xavier's voice shook with controlled fury. You've committed arson, theft, vandalism, and property destruction. All witnessed, all documented. Cole, ride to town. Get the sheriff. Catherine's face crumpled. Xavier, please. I'm your sister. You stopped being my sister the moment you put this ranch and my wife in danger. Xavier looked at her with something that might have been pity if it weren't so cold. You wanted to prove Violet didn't belong here. All you proved is that you don't. As Cole rode away, Catherine began to cry, harsh, desperate sobs. But Violet felt no sympathy. This woman had tried to destroy everything they'd built, had endangered innocent people and animals, had done it all for nothing more than pride and control. The sheriff arrived an hour later. He took Catherine into custody, his expression grim as he cataloged the evidence. Before they led her away, she turned to Xavier one last time. You'll regret this.
Margaret will fight you. The family will never accept her.
The family isn't your concern anymore. Xavier's voice was final. Goodbye, Catherine. As the sheriff's wagon disappeared into the darkness, Violet felt Xavier's hand find hers. They stood together in the lamplight, exhausted but unbroken. It's over. Xavier's voice was rough. She can't hurt us anymore.
What happens now?
Now we rebuild. Again. Like we've been doing all along. Xavier turned to face her. Violet, I need to tell you something. These past few weeks, working beside you, watching you refuse to quit no matter what Catherine threw at us, I've fallen in love with you. The words hit Violet like a physical force.
Xavier?
You don't have to say anything. I just needed you to know. Whatever happens next, whatever challenges we face, I love you. And I'm grateful every day that you chose to stay. Violet's throat tightened. She thought about the terrified girl who'd arrived at this ranch, certain she'd be rejected. She thought about everything that had happened since, the work, the fear, the determination, the partnership that had grown between them. I love you too. The words came out sure and strong. I think I have for weeks. I was just too scared to admit it. Xavier pulled her close, and this time when he kissed her, it wasn't brief or chaste. It was a promise, a commitment, a beginning. When they finally pulled apart, the eastern sky was beginning to lighten. A new day was coming, and Violet Landry, no longer just the desperate daughter of a failed merchant, but a rancher, a partner, a wife, was ready to face it. They worked through the dawn, clearing away the kerosene, checking every inch of the barn for damage. By the time the sun was fully up, Violet's hands were raw and her body was running on nothing but determination and the memory of Xavier's kiss. Rosa met them at the kitchen door, her eyes red-rimmed.
I heard what happened. Miss Catherine really tried to burn the barn?
She did more than try. She's been sabotaging us for weeks. Xavier accepted the coffee Rosa pressed into his hands. The sheriff has her in custody. It's over.
Is it?
Rosa's voice dropped.
Miss Margaret will hear about this by afternoon. She won't take it quietly.
Xavier's jaw tightened. Let her come. I'm done being patient with my sisters. But Rosa was right to worry. Margaret arrived before noon, her carriage rattling up the drive at a speed that sent dust flying. She stormed into the house without knocking, her face twisted with rage. How dare you have Catherine arrested? How dare she commit arson? Xavier didn't rise from his chair. She's lucky I didn't shoot her on sight. That's what we do to people who try to burn our property.
Our property? You mean your property?
Margaret's voice was shrill.
Catherine was trying to protect Father's legacy from your reckless decisions. By destroying it? Violet spoke up, her voice steady despite Margaret's withering glare.
That doesn't sound like protection to me.
You,
Margaret turned on her. This is all your fault. If you hadn't come here with your poverty and your schemes. Enough. Xavier stood now, and something in his posture made Margaret step back. Violet is my wife. She's done more for this ranch in 3 weeks than you and Catherine have done in 5 years. If you can't respect that, you're not welcome here. You can't throw me out. I'm family. Family doesn't commit crimes against each other. Family doesn't sabotage and destroy. Xavier moved toward her. Catherine's facing serious charges: arson, vandalism, theft. The sheriff has witnesses, evidence, her own confession. She's going to prison, Margaret. And if you're smart, you'll distance yourself from her actions before you get caught up in the investigation, too. Margaret's face went white.
You wouldn't. You wouldn't let your own sister go to prison.
I would. I did. And I'll do the same to you if you follow her path. Xavier's voice was flat. Now get out of my house.
The will.
The will's requirements are satisfied. I'm married. The ranch is mine. You have no claim here anymore. Xavier opened the door. Leave. Now, before I have you removed. Margaret's hands shook as she gathered her skirts.
You'll regret this, Xavier. When the whole territory knows what kind of woman you married. When everyone turns their backs on you.
Then we'll face it together. Xavier's hand found Violet's shoulder. That's what marriage means. Something you and Catherine never understood. After Margaret left, Violet sank into a chair, her legs suddenly weak.
She's going to spread lies about me. About us.
Let her try.
The truth is on our side.
Xavier knelt in front of her. Violet, look at me. Do you regret this? Any of it?
No.
The answer came instantly.
I'm scared of what's coming, but I don't regret choosing you.
Then we'll weather whatever storm Margaret tries to create. Xavier stood, pulled her to her feet. Right now, we have more immediate problems. The hands are exhausted from the patrols, the repairs are piling up, and we're behind on everything. We need to focus on the ranch, not on my sister's tantrums. Cole appeared in the doorway, his expression grim. Boss, we've got a problem. 4 of the hands just quit. Said they don't want to work for a family that's got this much drama. Violet's stomach dropped.
4? We can't afford to lose 4 men.
Can't afford to keep men who run at the first sign of trouble either. Xavier's voice was hard. Pay them out, Cole, and put the word out that we're hiring. I want men who aren't afraid of hard work or small-town gossip.
Yes, sir. Cole hesitated. Boss, there's something else. Mr. Henderson came by this morning. Said his cattle broke through onto our land again. He's demanding compensation.
Henderson's cattle have been breaking through for months. I've fixed his fence 3 times. Xavier's patience was clearly wearing thin. What does he want?
Says we need to pay for damages or he's taking us to court.
Of course he is. Xavier rubbed his face. Tell Henderson I'll ride over this afternoon to discuss it. But Cole, check that fence line first. Make sure our repairs are holding. After Cole left, Violet touched Xavier's arm.
Let me go with you to Henderson's.
You're exhausted.
So are you, and I'm your wife. His quarrel is with both of us now.
Violet's voice was firm.
Besides, you said we're partners. Partners face problems together.
Xavier studied her for a moment, then nodded. All right, but we ride out in an hour. I want to check the fence line myself first. The ride to Henderson's property took 30 minutes. The fence between the 2 ranches was in good repair. Xavier's work from the previous week was still solid. But on Henderson's side, the fence sagged and bent, clearly neglected. His cattle are breaking through because he won't maintain his own fences. Xavier's voice was tight with anger. And he's blaming us for it. Henderson met them at his gate, a stocky man in his 60s, with hard eyes and a harder expression. Took you long enough to show up. I came as soon as I could. What's this about compensation? Your fence let my cattle through. They trampled my hayfield. I'm out $200 in damages. Henderson crossed his arms. You pay it, or I take you to court. Your fence let your cattle through. Xavier dismounted, gestured to the sagging wire. This section is your responsibility to maintain. My side is solid. Your side is falling apart. I don't have money for fence repairs.
Lost half my crop to drought last year.
Henderson's voice turned bitter. Some of us don't have rich ranches and fancy new wives to bail us out. Violet stiffened at the jab, but Xavier's voice stayed level. Mr. Henderson, I'm sorry about your crop losses. But blaming me for your fence problems doesn't solve anything. If you need help with repairs, I can spare some hands. I don't want your charity. I want compensation for my damages. Which I'm not going to pay, because they're not my fault. Xavier's patience was clearly fraying. Fix your fence, control your cattle, or the next time they break through onto my land, I'll be the one demanding compensation. You threatening me, Landry? I'm stating facts. Your fence, your responsibility. Xavier turned back to his horse. We're done here. This isn't over, Henderson's voice rose. You think you're better than everyone else, with your big ranch and your society sisters. But I heard about Catherine getting arrested.
I heard she tried to burn you out. Maybe she had the right idea.
Xavier spun around, his hand moving to his rifle. Violet grabbed his arm hard. Don't. He's trying to provoke you. He just threatened to burn my property. I know, but if you shoot him, Margaret wins. She can claim you're violent, unstable. She can use it against us. Violet's voice was urgent. Let the law handle it. Report him to the sheriff for making threats. Xavier's jaw worked, but slowly he relaxed. You're right. He looked at Henderson, his voice deadly quiet. If anything happens to my ranch, to my wife, to any of my property, I'm coming for you first. And it won't be a legal matter. Understand? Henderson's bravado faltered slightly. You can't prove... I don't need proof. I just need suspicion. And right now, you've given me plenty of that. Xavier mounted his horse. Stay off my land, Henderson, and keep your cattle on your side of the fence. They rode away in silence. Violet could feel the tension radiating from Xavier in waves. Thank you for stopping me. You would have done the same for me. Violet's voice was quiet. But Xavier, this is getting worse, not better. First Catherine, now Henderson making threats. How many more enemies are we going to face? As many as it takes. Xavier's voice was grim. Success breeds jealousy. Always has. People see what we're building, and they want to tear it down. Or they want what we have. Then they should work for it like we do. Xavier glanced at her. You holding up all right? I'm scared. The admission came easier now. Every time we solve one problem, two more appear. I keep waiting for the moment when it all becomes too much. It won't, because we're stronger than our problems. Xavier reached across and took her hand. I know it feels overwhelming, but look how far we've come. 3 weeks ago, you'd never been on a horse. Now you're riding beside me, helping me face down threats. You're amazing, Violet. Don't forget that. The words warmed something cold inside her chest. You make me braver than I am. No, I just see the bravery you already have. They returned to find the ranch in controlled chaos. Cole had the remaining hands working double shifts to cover for the men who'd quit. Rosa was managing supplies, stretched too thin. And a letter had arrived from town, an official summons for Xavier to testify at Catherine's preliminary hearing. When? Xavier scanned the document. 3 days from now. Rosa's voice was worried. They'll expect Mrs. Landry to testify too. I'm ready. Violet straightened her shoulders. I'll tell them exactly what Catherine did. It's not just what she did. They'll ask about our marriage, about how we met, about the debt situation. Xavier's eyes met hers. They'll try to make it sound sordid. Margaret will make sure of it. Then we tell the truth, exactly as it happened. Violet's voice was steady. We have nothing to hide. The next 3 days were a blur of preparation and work.
Xavier coached Violet on what to expect in court, how to answer questions clearly and honestly. They practiced testimonies until Violet could recite the facts in her sleep. And through it all, they worked the ranch, repairing fences, tending cattle, managing the endless details that kept the operation running. The night before the hearing, Violet couldn't sleep. She stood at the bedroom window, watching the moonlit land, her mind racing through every possible question the lawyers might ask. "You're going to wear yourself out," Xavier's voice came from the doorway. "I keep thinking about what Margaret might say, what she might claim." "Whatever she says, we counter with truth." Xavier moved to stand beside her. "Violet, I need to tell you something. About my father's will." "What about it?" "There's a clause Catherine and Margaret don't know about. My father put it in there specifically to protect against what they've been trying to do." Xavier's voice was quiet. "If either of my sisters is convicted of a crime against me or the ranch, they forfeit any claim to the property, permanently. It all comes to me and my wife." Violet's breath caught. "Catherine's going to be convicted. The evidence is overwhelming." "Yes, which means Margaret's last chance to claim the ranch disappears with Catherine's conviction." Xavier turned to face her. "That's why tomorrow is so important. If Catherine's convicted, it's truly over. Margaret has no legal standing left." "But she could still cause trouble. She could still spread rumors, turn people against us." "Let her try. Public opinion doesn't change property law." Xavier's hands framed her face. "After tomorrow, the ranch is legally secure. No more threats, no more challenges. It's ours. Unless they prove our marriage is fraudulent." "They can't, because it's not." Xavier's voice was fierce. "I love you, Violet. That's real. Our partnership is real. The work we do together is real. No lawyer can argue that away." Violet leaned into his touch. "I love you too. I just wish I believed that was enough." "It is enough. You'll see." The courthouse was packed. Margaret sat in the front row, her lawyer beside her. A different man than Whitmore. Someone harder looking and more expensive. Catherine sat at the defendant's table, her elegant clothes looking out of place in the rough, territorial courtroom. The prosecutor called Xavier first. He testified clearly and factually about finding Catherine at the barn with the kerosene, about the weeks of sabotage, about the evidence Cole had collected. Margaret's lawyer tried to shake him during cross-examination, but Xavier didn't budge. "Isn't it true, Mr. Landry, that you've had disagreements with your sisters about the management of the ranch?" "Yes." "And isn't it true that these disagreements have been ongoing for years?" "Yes." "So isn't it possible that you're using this alleged incident to remove your sisters from any claim to your father's estate?" "No. I'm testifying about a crime I witnessed. What my sisters claim or don't claim about the estate is irrelevant to the fact that Catherine tried to burn my barn." The lawyer shifted tactics. "Let's talk about your marriage. You married Miss Harper very suddenly, did you not?" "We married when we chose to marry." "After knowing each other for only 2 weeks?" "Some people know after 2 minutes. Some people never know. We knew." Xavier's voice was steady. "Is there a legal requirement for how long a courtship should last?" "No, but then my marriage timeline is not relevant to this case. We're here to discuss arson, not my personal life." The judge intervened. "Counselor, stick to the charges at hand." When Violet was called, her heart hammered so hard she thought everyone could hear it. She swore on the Bible, sat in the witness chair, and faced the packed courtroom. The prosecutor was gentle with her. She described arriving at the ranch, Xavier's offer to clear her father's debt, regardless of marriage, her choice to stay and work. She testified about the fence cutting, the missing cattle, the fire, and finally,
about catching Catherine with the kerosene can. Then Margaret's lawyer stood, and Violet braced herself. "Mrs. Landry, you claim your husband offered to forgive your father's debt without requiring marriage. Do you have any proof of this offer?" "Rosa and Thomas were present when he made it." "His employees, who would presumably say whatever he told them to say." The lawyer's smile was thin. "Anyone else?" "I was there. I heard it. That's my proof." "So we have only your word, and the word of Mr. Landry's loyal servants, that this alleged offer was made?" "Yes, because it's the truth." "Or it's a convenient story you've concocted to make this transactional marriage appear legitimate." The lawyer moved closer. "Isn't it true that you married Xavier Landry because you had no other options? That your family was destitute and desperate?" "My family was struggling financially, yes." "And isn't it true that marrying Mr. Landry solved all your financial problems?" "Xavier solved my father's debt problems. The marriage solved nothing except giving me a partner and a home." Violet's voice strengthened. "I could have walked away. He told me I could leave. I chose to stay." "How convenient that you chose to stay with a wealthy rancher rather than return to poverty." "I chose to stay with a good man who treated me with respect. The money had nothing to do with it." Violet leaned forward. "I've worked harder in the past month than I've ever worked in my life. I've learned skills I never knew existed. I've earned my place on that ranch through effort and determination, not through manipulation or schemes. If you think marrying for money means sitting in a parlor doing needlework, you don't know the first thing about ranch life." A murmur ran through the courtroom. The lawyer's expression tightened. "You're very passionate in your defense, Mrs. Landry, almost as if you've practiced it." "I'm passionate because I'm telling the truth. And yes, I practiced. My husband warned me that lawyers would try to twist my words, try to make our marriage sound sordid. He was right." Violet met the lawyer's eyes. "But no amount of practice changes the facts. Catherine Landry committed arson. I witnessed it. That's why we're here. Not to discuss my marriage, but to address a crime." The judge nodded approvingly. "The witness is correct. Move on, counselor." But the lawyer wasn't done. "Mrs. Landry, has your husband ever threatened you? Coerced you in any way?" "No, never." "Has he ever suggested that you must stay married to him or face consequences?" "No." "The only consequences I'd face are the natural ones of ending a partnership I value." Violet's voice rang clear. "I stay married to Xavier because I love him, because we're building something together, because every day I wake up grateful that I made the choice to stay. No one forced that. No one manipulated it. It was my choice, and I'd make it again." The courtroom was silent. Even Margaret's lawyer seemed momentarily at a loss for words. When Violet stepped down, Xavier was waiting. His hand found hers, and she felt the tremor in it, emotion he was barely containing. "You were perfect," he whispered. "I was honest." The trial continued with other witnesses. Cole describing the evidence, Thomas confirming the timeline, Rosa testifying about Catherine's hostile behavior toward Violet. Finally, the prosecutor rested his case. Margaret's lawyer called Catherine to the stand. She maintained her innocence, claimed she'd only been at the barn to check on the horses, that the kerosene was for the lamps. But her story fell apart under cross-examination. The prosecutor presented the torn fabric from her coat, the timeline that placed her at multiple sabotage sites, witness testimony about her threats. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. When they returned, the foreman stood. "We find the defendant, Catherine Landry, guilty of arson, criminal mischief, and theft." Margaret's gasp echoed through the courtroom. Catherine's face crumpled. Xavier's hand tightened on Violet's, but his expression remained stoic. The judge set sentencing for the following week, but indicated that prison time was likely. As the courtroom cleared, Margaret pushed through the crowd to reach them. "Are you happy now?" Her voice was thick with tears and rage. "You've destroyed your own sister." "Catherine destroyed herself." Xavier's voice was flat.
"I gave her every chance to stop. She chose to escalate. Father would be ashamed of you. Father would be ashamed of what Catherine became. What you both became." Xavier stood. "You have a choice now, Margaret. You can accept reality and move on with your life, or you can keep fighting a battle you've already lost. But either way, stay away from my ranch and my wife." Margaret's eyes filled with hatred. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is." Xavier turned away, ending the conversation. As he led Violet out of the courthouse, she could feel Margaret's stare burning into her back. Outside, the afternoon sun was bright and warm. People clustered in groups, whispering, staring. Violet held her head high, refusing to show the fear that churned in her stomach. "They're all talking about us." "Let them talk. We won." Xavier helped her onto the wagon. "Catherine's convicted. Margaret has no claim. The ranch is secure. Then why doesn't it feel like victory?" Xavier was quiet for a moment. "Because we're decent people, and sending someone to prison, even someone who deserves it, doesn't feel good. But necessary isn't the same as pleasant." They rode in silence for a while. Then Violet spoke again. "What happens now?" "Now we go home. We work the ranch. We build our life." Xavier glanced at her. "We prove to everyone, including ourselves, that we made the right choice." "And if Margaret keeps causing trouble?" "Then we handle it, same as we've handled everything else." Xavier's voice softened. "Together, Violet. We handle it together." As they approached the ranch, Violet saw Cole and the hands waiting near the barn. When the wagon pulled up, Cole stepped forward. "Well?" "Guilty on all counts." Xavier climbed down, helped Violet after him. "It's done." Cole's face split into a rare grin. "About time justice got served." He turned to the other hands. "You hear that, boys? Boss got his ranch back for good. And Mrs. Landry helped do it." The men cheered, not loudly, but with genuine approval. Violet felt tears prick her eyes. "Thank you." Her voice came out rough. "For standing by us through all of this." "You earned it, ma'am." Cole tipped his hat. "Now, boss, what's the plan? We've got fence repairs waiting, and that new bull needs breaking in." "The plan is, we get back to work." Xavier's voice carried relief and determination. "No more legal battles. No more sabotage. Just honest work and building this ranch into something Father would be proud of." As the men dispersed, Xavier pulled Violet close. "We did it. We actually did it." "We survived," Violet corrected. "Now we have to figure out how to thrive." "We will, because that's what we do." Xavier kissed her forehead. "Come on. Rose has probably got dinner waiting, and I'm starving." But as they walked toward the house, Violet couldn't shake the image of Margaret's face, the pure hatred burning there. Catherine might be heading to prison, but Margaret was still free, and free, angry, and desperate was a dangerous combination. Violet pushed the worry aside. They'd face that problem when it came. Tonight, she just wanted to enjoy this moment of peace, however temporary it might be. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. Violet was in the barn with Cole, learning to assess cattle health, when Thomas came running. "Mrs. Landry, there's trouble in town. You and the boss need to get there now." Xavier appeared from the tack room. "What kind of trouble?" "Margaret's at the bank. She's trying to freeze your accounts. Says she's filing an injunction claiming the ranch assets should be held in trust pending appeal of Catherine's conviction."
Xavier's face went hard. She can't do that. Catherine's case is closed. She's trying anyway. Bank manager sent his son to warn you. Thomas was already saddling horses. If she succeeds, you won't be able to pay the hands, buy supplies, nothing. They rode hard. Violet's thighs burned from gripping the saddle, but she didn't slow down. Everything they'd fought for could disappear if Margaret succeeded. The bank was crowded when they burst through the doors. Margaret stood at the manager's desk, another expensive lawyer beside her. Papers spread everywhere. Xavier, the bank manager, a nervous man named Pritchard, looked relieved to see them. Mrs. Brennan is claiming— I know what she's claiming, and it's nonsense. Xavier strode forward. My accounts are my own. Catherine's conviction doesn't change that. Actually, it does. Margaret's lawyer spoke smoothly. The estate was to be divided between the 3 Landry siblings upon certain conditions. Catherine's criminal conviction creates legal ambiguity about asset distribution. There's no ambiguity. The will is clear. The ranch and all associated assets are mine upon marriage, which I am. The will says nothing about criminal convictions affecting this. Xavier's voice was ice. You're grasping at straws, Margaret. I'm protecting family interests. Margaret's eyes were cold. Father never intended for a stranger to control everything. If Catherine can't inherit, her share should pass to me. Catherine forfeited her share when she committed crimes against the estate. The will has a specific clause about that. Xavier pulled out a document, his father's will. Section 12, paragraph 3. Any heir convicted of crimes against the estate or its beneficiaries forfeits all claims. Period. Pritchard examined the will, his relief visible. Mr. Landry is correct. This clause is unambiguous. Margaret's lawyer tried again. We could argue the marriage itself violated the will's spirit. We already had that argument in court. We won. Xavier's patience was gone. Pritchard, I want my accounts secured against any further harassment, and I want documentation that proves Margaret has no legal standing to touch any of my assets. Of course, Mr. Landry. Pritchard was already pulling forms. Mrs. Brennan, I'm afraid your request is denied. Margaret stood abruptly. This isn't over. I'll take this to every court in the territory. Go ahead, Violet spoke up, her voice steady. Waste your money on lawyers. Spend years fighting battles you've already lost. Or you could accept reality and move on with your life. You don't get to speak to me. Margaret's voice shook with rage. You're nothing but a gold-digging opportunist who manipulated my brother. I'm his wife, and I've earned my place on that ranch through work, not manipulation. Violet moved closer. You and Catherine thought sending me would humiliate Xavier. You thought he'd reject me and prove your point. But all you proved is that you don't understand him at all. He doesn't care about money or status. He cares about character, and that's something you'll never have. The entire bank had gone silent, watching. Margaret's face turned scarlet. You think you've won? The whole territory knows what you are. A poor merchant's daughter who trapped a wealthy rancher. You'll never be accepted here. She already is. Cole's voice came from the doorway. Behind him stood 6 of the ranch hands, all in their work clothes, all looking at Margaret with open hostility. Mrs. Landry works harder than most men I know. She's earned respect. You want to talk about what people think? Talk to anyone who's actually met her, not the gossips in Denver who've never set foot on a working ranch. More people were gathering. Shopkeepers, farmers, other ranchers. A woman Violet vaguely recognized from church stepped forward. Mrs. Brennan, I've watched Mrs. Landry at Sunday services. She's respectful, kind, and humble. She doesn't put on airs or look down on anyone. Can you say the same? Another voice chimed in. My boy works on the Landry ranch. Says Mrs. Landry fixed his injured arm herself. Rode 3 hours to fetch the doctor.
Says she treated him like family. More voices joined. People defending Violet, sharing stories. She stood frozen, overwhelmed by the unexpected support. Xavier's hand found hers and squeezed. Margaret's lawyer tugged her sleeve. "Mrs. Brennan, we should go." "This isn't—" "It's over." The lawyer's voice was firm. "You have no legal standing, no public support, and you're making yourself look worse by the minute. We need to leave." Margaret stared at Violet with pure hatred, but slowly she gathered her things and walked out. The crowd parted for her, their silence more damning than any words. After she left, the woman from church approached Violet. "Mrs. Landry, I'm Elizabeth Warren. I wanted to apologize for not speaking up sooner."
There's been a lot of gossip, and I'm ashamed I listened to it instead of getting to know you myself.
"Thank you."
Violet's throat was tight. "That means more than you know." Others came forward, introducing themselves, offering friendship, inviting her to social gatherings. By the time they left the bank, Violet felt dizzy with relief and gratitude. Outside, Cole clapped Xavier on the shoulder. "That's the end of it, boss. Margaret can't fight the whole town." "She'll try, but you're right, she's lost." Xavier looked at Violet. "You all right?"
"I think so. I didn't expect people to defend me like that."
"You earned it." Xavier's voice was soft. "Every day, every conversation, every act of kindness. You built that support without even realizing it." That evening, a letter arrived from Violet's father. She opened it with shaking hands, Xavier reading over her shoulder. "My dearest Violet, I received news of Catherine's conviction and your testimony. I've also heard from several sources about the kind of woman you've become. Strong, capable, respected. I'm writing to tell you how proud I am, and how sorry. I'm sorry I put you in a position where you felt you had no choice. I'm sorry my failures forced you into a desperate situation. But I'm grateful, so grateful, that despite everything, you found happiness." Xavier Landry wrote to me last week. He told me about your partnership, about the work you do together, about how you've transformed the ranch. He told me he loves you. I want you to know that your debt is truly cleared. Not just the money, though Xavier has been more than generous about that, but the debt of obligation you felt you owed me. You don't owe me anything, Violet. You never did. You've given me back my dignity and my hope simply by thriving. Your loving father, Samuel Harper. Violet's vision blurred with tears. Xavier pulled her close. He's right, you know. You've transformed more than just the ranch. I was so angry at him for so long, for putting me in that position. And now? Now I'm grateful. Because if he hadn't, I never would have found you. Violet looked up at Xavier. I never would have discovered what I'm capable of. 3 weeks later, Violet was in the south pasture helping Cole move cattle when she saw a familiar figure riding toward them. Her breath caught. Xavier. He reached them quickly, his expression urgent. Violet, you need to come with me, now. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. Just trust me. She followed him back to the main house, where Rosa waited on the porch, beaming. Go get cleaned up, child. You've got visitors. Confused, Violet washed quickly and changed into a clean dress. When she emerged, the dining room was full of people. Her father, her grandmother, Elizabeth Warren and her husband, several other ranchers and their wives, even Justice Harwell and his wife who'd performed their wedding. What is this? A celebration. Xavier took her hand. We've been so busy surviving that we never actually celebrated our marriage. So I invited people who matter to us. Violet's grandmother moved forward, tears streaming down her face.
Look at you. Just look at you. Strong, confident, happy. Oh, Violet, I was so worried when you left. I'm sorry I didn't write more. Don't you dare apologize. You were building a life. I'm just grateful I get to see it. Her grandmother embraced her fiercely. And grateful to meet the man who saw what we always knew was in you. Her father approached more hesitantly. Violet, It's all right, Papa. Violet took his hands. We're all right. Xavier told me what you've accomplished. How you've learned the ranch, earned the respect of the hands, stood up to his sisters. Samuel's voice broke. I raised you to be strong, but I didn't know how strong until now. I'm so proud of you. The celebration lasted hours. People shared stories, toasted the couple, welcomed Violet into the community properly. Xavier stood beside her through all of it, his hand never far from hers. When everyone had left, Rosa shooed them out of the cleanup. Go, take a walk, enjoy the evening. They walked to the creek, the same water source that had caused so much trouble with Henderson. Xavier had settled that dispute by offering to help Henderson repair his fences in exchange for proper boundary maintenance. It had worked. Henderson's hostility had faded when faced with practical generosity. You planned all of this. Violet leaned against Xavier's shoulder. Guilty. I wanted you to see what I see every day. How much people respect you. How much you've built here. We've built. Yes, we. Xavier turned her to face him. Violet, when you first arrived, I was focused on saving the ranch, on meeting the will's requirements, on defeating Catherine and Margaret. But somewhere along the way, that stopped being what mattered most. What matters most now? You. Us. This partnership we've created. Xavier's hands cupped her face. I love you more than I thought it was possible to love someone. You challenge me, support me, work beside me, fight for me. You've made this ranch a home instead of just a business. You've made my life complete. Violet's throat tightened. Xavier, let me finish. I know our marriage started as a solution to a problem, but it's become the best decision I ever made. Not because it saved the ranch, but because it gave me you. Xavier pulled out a small box. Inside was a simple gold band with a single small diamond. We got married in a rushed ceremony with no ring, no celebration, no real choice. I want to give you a choice now. Marry me again, Violet. Not because of debts or wills or deadlines. Marry me because you want to spend your life with me. Because what we have is real and worth celebrating. Tears spilled down Violet's cheeks. We're already married. Then marry me again. In the church, with your family present, with a whole community watching. Let everyone see that this isn't a transaction. It's a love story. Yes. The word came out choked with emotion. Yes. I'll marry you again. I'll marry you 1,000 times. Xavier slipped the ring onto her finger, then kissed her with a tenderness that made her feel cherished and precious and wholly loved. The church wedding happened 6 weeks later. Violet wore a dress Rosa and Elizabeth had helped her make. Simple, but beautiful. Nothing like the elaborate gowns Catherine would have chosen. Her father walked her down the aisle with tears in his eyes. Xavier waited at the altar, and when Violet reached him, his smile was pure joy. We're really doing this again, she whispered. We're doing it right this time. Xavier took her hands. With everyone who matters watching, with no secrets or shadows. Just us, choosing each other. The ceremony was everything their first wedding hadn't been. Public, joyful, celebrated. When the minister pronounced them husband and wife, the church erupted in applause. Xavier kissed her thoroughly, and Violet heard her grandmother's delighted laughter in the crowd.
The reception was held at the ranch. Tables were set up near the main house, music played, and people danced under the stars.
Violet found herself passed from partner to partner, dancing with her father, with Cole, with Justice Harwell, with Xavier, over and over again. Late in the evening, as things were winding down, a rider approached. Everyone tensed, expecting trouble. But it was Margaret. She dismounted slowly, her expensive clothes looking out of place among the working ranchers. Xavier moved in front of Violet protectively. "Margaret, you're not welcome here." "I know. I'm not staying." Margaret's voice was quiet, defeated. "I came to say something I should have said months ago." "What?" "I was wrong." Margaret looked at Violet. "About you. About what my brother needed. About everything. I watched Catherine destroy herself trying to control things that weren't hers to control. I almost made the same mistake." Violet studied her carefully. "Why are you telling us this?" "Because I'm leaving. Going back east to my husband's family. Starting over somewhere, I can't keep making the same mistakes." Margaret's hands twisted together. "I wanted you to know that I see it now. What you and Xavier have. It's real. It's good. And I'm sorry I tried to destroy it." Xavier was silent for a long moment. Then, quietly, "Thank you for saying that." "I don't expect forgiveness. I just wanted the truth on record." Margaret turned to leave, then paused. "Father would have liked her, Xavier. He would have seen what you see. I wish I'd had the wisdom to see it sooner." She rode away into the darkness. Violet felt the last knot of tension in her chest finally release. "Did that just happen?" she whispered. "I think it did." Xavier pulled her close. "It's really over now. All of it. No more threats, no more fighting. Just us and the life we're building." 6 months later, Violet stood in the same south pasture where this had all begun, watching the sunrise paint the sky gold and pink. She was wearing work clothes, her hands calloused and strong, a hat shading her face from the early light. Behind her, she heard Xavier's horse approaching. "Thought I'd find you here." "I was checking on the new calves. They're all healthy, strong." Violet turned to him, smiled. "We're going to have a good year." "We're having a good life." Xavier dismounted, moved to stand beside her. "Cole told me something interesting yesterday. He said the hands are calling you boss lady now. Not to your face, but among themselves." "Really?" "Really. And it's meant with respect. They see you as a partner in running this place, not just the boss's wife." Xavier's voice was warm with pride. "You've done it, Violet. You've built something here that no amount of money or breeding could have bought." Violet thought about the girl who'd arrived here months ago, terrified and certain she'd be rejected. She thought about everything that had happened since, the challenges, the growth, the love that had bloomed in the midst of chaos. She thought about Catherine in prison, Margaret rebuilding her life elsewhere, the ranch thriving under their partnership. "I couldn't have done it without you." "Yes, you could have, but I'm glad you didn't have to." Xavier took her hand, the wedding ring catching the light. "This is what Father wanted when he put that marriage clause in his will. Not a society alliance or a business merger. He wanted me to find someone who'd fight for this land the way he did. Someone who'd love it enough to work for it every single day." "I do love it. The work, the land, the life we're creating." Violet squeezed his hand. "But mostly, I love the partnership. Waking up every day knowing we're in this together." A rider approached. One of the hands with news about fence repairs needed in the east pasture. Xavier gave instructions, sent him on his way, then turned back to Violet. "Ready to start the day?" "Always." Violet mounted Copper with practiced ease, no longer the nervous beginner who'd been terrified of horses. Race you to the barn? Xavier's grin was competitive. You're on. They raced across the pasture, their laughter echoing across the land they'd fought so hard to protect. When they reached the barn, breathless and happy, Cole was waiting with a knowing smile. Boss, lady, we've got work to do. Then let's do it. Violet dismounted, ready for whatever the day would bring. Because this was her life now. Not the one she'd been born into, not the one desperation had forced her toward, but the one she'd chosen with clear eyes and a strong heart. She was Violet Landry, rancher's wife, partner, fighter, survivor. The girl they'd sent thinking Xavier would refuse had become the woman who made him complete. The poorest choice had become the greatest treasure. And every morning when she woke beside Xavier, every evening when they reviewed the day's work together, every moment they stood side by side, facing challenges and celebrating victories, Violet knew with absolute certainty that she'd found exactly where she belonged. They'd tried to use her poverty as a weapon, but instead it had been her strength, because she knew how to work, how to endure, how to build something from nothing. They'd thought her background made her worthless, but it had taught her resilience that society women would never possess. They'd sent her expecting rejection, and instead she'd found acceptance, respect, love, and a partnership that would last a lifetime. The ranch stretched around them, their ranch, built on honest work and genuine love. The cattle grazed peacefully, the fences stood strong, the land thrived under their care. And Violet and Xavier stood together, facing the future with the confidence of two people who'd survived the worst and built the best. This was their treasure, not money or status or family legacy, but a love forged in fire and tested by adversity. A partnership of equals, a marriage that had started as a desperate gamble and became the surest bet either of them had ever made. Xavier Landry had seen through poverty to strength, through desperation to courage, through circumstance to character. And Violet Harper had seen through wealth to integrity, through obligation to choice, through necessity to love. Together, they'd built something neither could have created alone, a ranch that thrived, a community that respected them, and a love story that proved the poorest girl could be the richest blessing, if someone had the wisdom to see her true worth.